After witnessing a COVID surge in the state, West Bengal is entering into a strict lockdown from today. The lockdown is going to continue till 30th of May, in which only essential services, emergency services are going to be allowed to be functional. The state government, led by Mamata Banerjee, has even ordered closure of government offices, intrastate bus services, metro, ferry service, gyms, cinema halls, salons, swimming pools, all are going to remain closed. However, retail shops will be allowed to function from 7 to 10 in the morning. The government has suspended board exams in West Bengal scheduled in June. Vaccination centers are going to remain open throughout the state during this lockdown period.
Shopping complexes, malls, market complexes, spas, beauty parlors, cinema halls, restaurants, bars, sports complexes, gyms, swimming pools shall remain closed. Retail shops and supplies, bazaars and haats relating to vegetables, fruits, groceries, milk, bread, meat and eggs shall be allowed to remain open between 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. only.
Anupam Mishra is joining us, reporting from Kolkata. Anupam, why don't you walk our viewers through the do's and don'ts of these curbs that have come into place from the state administration side in West Bengal?
Yes, this is the first morning of the lockdown. Although state government did not officially call the restrictions lockdown, but we can call it partial lockdown with strict actions. And right now I can show you the roads which are empty as usual, and police is deployed everywhere. The shops are allowed to open, especially grocery shops and vegetable vendors are allowed to remain open between 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and sweet shops are allowed to open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. There are a lot of restrictions placed, and right now what we are looking into, the police is checking the vehicle, the movement of persons, whether they are out on the road for emergency services which are allowed to remain open or not. So these are the scenario in the first day of the partial lockdown which we call in West Bengal.
All right, leave it at that. Thanks so much for joining us with those details right there. The Goa government has refused to take responsibility for the deaths at Goa Medical College, denying the lack of oxygen as the reason behind COVID patients succumbing at the hospital. The state government held that deaths were due to critical condition of the patients. Goa Chief Minister Pramod Sawant refused to take questions on the oxygen crisis and the death issue during a press conference last evening. When questions were posed to the Chief Minister Pramod Sawant, he directed them to Dean Shivanandan Bandekar. When more questions were asked on the death and the lack of preparedness, Chief Minister Pramod Sawant left the press briefing midway, refusing to answer questions, evading all the questions that are being put forth by the journalists. Remember, over 70 patients have lost their lives at the Goa Medical College in the last few days, reportedly due to oxygen fluctuation, putting the state government in the dock, making it accountable and answerable, and the Chief Minister refuses to answer these questions.
How many patients have died in GMC for the till date? How many patients have died in GMC because of
explain करके जाएगा नहीं तो सोतो सो.
We can't put this as a direct answer, you know. See.
I think Dean had explained. Dean ने आंसर कर दिया सब कुछ.
Why is Goa breathless, and what is causing so many deaths in the state's primary hospital, Goa Medical College? There have been 75 deaths so far, and it's alleged that the inconsistent oxygen supply is behind the fatalities, and the Goa Chief Minister even refuses to answer the questions. He leaves press conferences midway. With Goa government now announcing to establish 20,000 litres of liquid oxygen plant in the hospital. But isn't that too little, too late? Saurabh Vaktania with this ground report.
This is the Goa Medical College, which has become a hospital of horrors. Every day and every night, patients infected with COVID lose their lives due to erratic oxygen supply. This is the exact location where oxygen cylinders are loaded in trolleys and then brought to the hospital in tractors. It's alleged that tractor drivers are finding it difficult to maneuver.
These are the tractors on which the trolleys are attached, and on those trolleys, these are the oxygen cylinders. Now continuously several rounds are made through this tractors. Oxygen cylinders are brought into this Goa Medical College Hospital.
That's not all. This is your worst nightmare turning into reality. Oxygen does not even reach the COVID wards.
The oxygen pipes are several years old, and therefore the oxygen does not supply to the third and fourth floor properly, and the oxygen level several times goes down, which is when the patients die.
So how is oxygen being supplied to this hospital? First, Scoop Industries Private Limited, a private firm, is the supplier. The refilling plant of the firm is at Korlim, which is 15 kilometers away from the hospital. The oxygen is brought to the hospital in tractors and trolleys under police protection. Facing unprecedented heat from the opposition over the string of deaths, the Goa government has finally broken its silence. Goa's Health Minister Vishwajit Rane has said that 350 patients are shifted from the old GMC building to the new super speciality hospital. Earlier, the Health Minister had said that the super speciality hospital will be commissioned. He then retracted from that statement after India Today's report and now claims that it's already functional. He also assured the setting up of a 20,000-litre oxygen plant in the hospital as early as on Saturday itself.
Most important part of this tweet was Goa's Health Minister Rane is appealing to the Chief Minister Pramod Sawant to commission this block. So, even if this place is still not commissioned, 350 people, 350 COVID patients have been shifted over here. So what is the government waiting for to commission this hospital? And is there no coordination between the health minister and the chief minister?
But the opposition is unimpressed, directly blaming the chief minister for the fatalities.
If I am suppose that health minister also was record earlier saying that the maintenance needs to be done. The maintenance is taken care by the GSIDC, which is Goa State Infrastructural Development Corporation, which is headed again by the chief minister. I don't know what is GSIDC doing.
It's taken scores of deaths for the Goa government to wake up. But even so, the situation continues to remain grim and there are no major changes on the ground as yet. With Saurabh Bhaktania in Panaji, Bureau Report, India Today.
At a time when Goa is reeling under the COVID crisis, a place known for its spiritual value has come forward to help. St. Joseph Vaz Spiritual Renewal Centre has been converted into COVID care centre. With the permission of Goa government, it set up 56 beds with food, medicine, other items free of cost. St. Joseph Centre has private nurses, but many nuns have also extended a helping hand and are looking after patients tirelessly. Even the Goa Sikh community is making an impeccable mark. The example set by the Sikh community is great. It's offering langar in front of Goa Medical Hospital with langar. They are also serving juices, water, fruits to the kin of COVID patients. From waking up in the morning to preparing the food by themselves, all of this is being done by them. At a time when the second wave of COVID is ravaging the country, there are some places and some humans really restoring faith in humanity, and the visuals of which are on your screens at the moment.
हमारे पास में मेन कोर्स में जीरा राइस मिक्स वेजिटेबल है और पानी बोतल है, जूस बोतल है, फ्रूट्स है, तो बिस्किट है। इनमें सब फ्री है सर, कोई भी लेके जा सकता है। हमारा 12 बजे से लेके 3:30 बजे तक कंटिन्यू हम लोग चलते हैं ऐसे ही। मरना तो सबका हो सकता है, घर बैठे भी कोरोना कुछ लोगों को हो रहा है। हम सोचते हैं किसी की भला करके, क्या पता किसी की दुआएं से हमारे को अच्छा हो जाए। डर तो लगता है, क्या मुझे मरने से अच्छा घर बैठ के मरेंगे, बाहर आके किसी की सेवा करके मरेंगे, इससे अच्छा है सर, इससे अच्छा कुछ नहीं।
The place is the St. Joseph Vaz Spiritual Renewal Centre, belonging to the Archdiocese of Goa in Daman. We thought of converting this place into a COVID care centre, and we started it from last Monday, that is on the 10th of May. We got a permission from the government, the health ministry of the government of Goa, to make this into a COVID care centre. Right now, within these 4 days, we have 18 persons already admitted.
Situation due to coronavirus in Goa is very bad. We have seen in the city that how people are not getting beds, no oxygen supply. But what is the condition of interior Goa? We have reached old Goa. Now here what is happening, there are these religious places who have come forward. They have converted them into a COVID center. This is St. Joseph Vaz Healing Center, and this whole religious place is now converted into a proper COVID center. Here in the visuals you can see how the 3-story high this particular building, all floor has several oxygen beds, normal beds, and let me tell you, all of this is free of cost. They have food supply, medicine supply, they have the nuns who have treating them as a nurses, their doctors coming in, they're treating patients, and this is how people of Goa, the religious places as well, coming forward and helping the common people. With camera person Samir Shanbag, this is Saurav Vakhtania in Goa for India Today.
In these times of COVID crisis, there are many who are going out of their way to help others, but there are also some who continue to flout the norms. On the left side of your screens is a video from Karnataka's Kalaburgi, where an auto rickshaw driver is extending a helping hand to COVID patients and their families. At a time when patients are being overcharged for ambulances, he's running a free auto rickshaw service for the ones in need. On the right-hand side of your screens are the COVIDians from Bihar's Kaimur district. Cops there have resorted to a new way of punishing these COVIDians. A mini truck that was packed by dozens of people on the way to attend a marriage ceremony was stopped by the cops. The violators were then made to do frog jumps in the middle of the street. Lack of facilities and equipment has made the rise of quacks in rural India. People are now turning to these hospitals where there are no oxygen cylinders, no ventilators, no medicines. My colleague Preeti Chaudhary met a few villagers who have paid an immense amount of money to get hospitalized for a few hours. Take a look at this ground report.
The rural belt in Uttar Pradesh is most vulnerable. Lack of basic healthcare has led to fly-by-night hospitals run by quacks, coming up and dismantling within hours, fleecing villagers. India Today met many villagers who paid upwards of Rs 40,000 even just for a few hours of hospitalization with no facilities. Ramakant Pandya in Kashaiganj, Varanasi has lost his mother. There have been 7 deaths in his village in 8 days. With no bed available in any hospital, he and others in his village heard of Sunrise Hospital, 30 kilometers away from Chitaipur. It was new, opened 20 days ago when Corona was peaking in the area, and we are ready to take patients in any condition.
हम लोग सैनिटाइजर में ले गए थे वहाँ पर, तो वहाँ पर जो ले गए थे तो वो हम तो ले भर्ती तो कर लिए, लेकिन कोई दवा कोई इलाज कुछ नहीं किए। खाली हर मतलब वो जब पूछे डॉक्टर आ रहे हैं, डॉक्टर आ रहे यही करते रह गए। और शाम को 7 बजे भर्ती किए थे और रात को 10:30-11 बजे तक डेट हो गया उनका।
Ramakant took his mother there. In 3 hours, she was dead. The hospital refused to release her body till over 40,000 rupees were paid to the hospital.
ऑक्सीजन लगा था? ऑक्सीजन भी नहीं लगाए थे, खाली बस आ रहे हैं डॉक्टर साहब देखेंगे तो ऑक्सीजन लगाएंगे, ये कह रहे थे। बस ये कह रहे थे? बस यही कह रहे थे। उनका ऑक्सीजन लेवल चेक किए थे कि नहीं किए? कुछ नहीं किए, वो एकदम टोटल कुछ नहीं किया। 6,000 का दवा भी मंगाए और दवा भी एक भी हमको मिला नहीं।
His neighbor Shiva took his mother-in-law to the same hospital. She died soon.
हमारे पास सुबह फोन गया कि उनका तबीयत थोड़ा गड़बड़ हुआ है, तो वहाँ पर जाने के बाद तुरंत हम लोग यहाँ आए, यहाँ से आए तुरंत हॉस्पिटल लेकर गए। हॉस्पिटल ले जाते जाते उनको हॉस्पिटल वालों ने बोला उनकी डेथ हो चुकी है।
The locals in the area want an investigation into this new hospital, but no one has heard of them.
तो जो यहाँ पर कहाँ जांच हो, मतलब अस्पताल कहाँ लेके जा रहे हैं, क्या
यहाँ पे मतलब होता क्या है कि प्राइवेट में लोग लेके जा रहे हैं, नहीं ले रहे हैं। कपिल चौरा में लेके जाएंगे, वहाँ भी नहीं लेंगे। उसके बाद BHU तक हम खुद वहाँ पे इनके साथ गए हुए थे, BHU तक नहीं लिया। तो वही सनराइज प्राइवेट हॉस्पिटल में लोग लेके गए, सिर्फ वहाँ पे पैसे की व्यवस्था के लिए वहाँ मशीन द्वारा ये बनाया गया है। कोई ट्रीटमेंट नहीं है, बस सिर्फ उनको किसी भी कितना भी कंडीशन खराब आइए, 2 घंटा 3 घंटा रखिए, पैसा दीजिए, जाइए।
Our team went to the Sunrise Hospital 30 kilometers away, and what we saw was shambolic.
It's hospitals like these that have come up overnight because there is absolutely no space in the city to take in corona patients in the Varanasi district. Lots of complaints coming in of this hospital where large sums of money has been taken. Patients who are on the deathbed have been taken in, but even something as small as oxygen is also not administered.
A small basement taken over as a hospital. The owner, Dr. Mishra, at first said he didn't take any COVID cases, then said he had full machinery to deal with any eventuality. When we asked if he had a ventilator, later he took us to his ICU.
डॉक्टर साहब, आपका वेंटिलेटर ये है वेंटिलेटर? कहाँ है? बाहर किधर है? बता दीजिए, आप वेंटिलेटर दिखाने लाए थे, किधर है?
This is what we saw. COVID patients struggling to breathe. No ventilator, no BiPAP, no CPAP machines.
ये छोटा है ना?
कौन सा है? कहाँ है?
हेलो.
He soon disappeared from the hospital.
वेंटिलेटर दिखाने लाए थे, किधर है?
India Today team informed the local administrators about this hospital with zero medical facilities.
नाम बताइए डॉक्टर, आप डॉक्टर मिश्रा हैं क्या?
हाँ. हाँ.
दिखाइए जरा.
क्या दिखाए? नहीं दिखाऊंगा.
The tragedy is that even if any action is taken against the hospitals like these, collaterals will continue to be hapless villagers with little information. With Preeti Chaudhary, Bureau Report, India Today.
As the country is facing monster COVID surge, the rise in cases of black fungus has added to the worries of the doctors and COVID patients. Several states are reporting more and more black fungus cases in COVID patients. The black fungus infection, also known as mucormycosis, is caused by a fungus called mucor. The infection is also leading to fatalities amongst COVID patients. The latest cases of black fungus are being reported in Karnataka, UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Uttarakhand, Haryana. Dr. Guleria has warned against the spread of mucormycosis and recommended that COVID cases is increasing. It is of paramount importance that protocols of infection control practices are followed. In Karnataka, infection has resulted in serious shortage of treatment drug known as amphotericin B.
एम्स में कुछ घटनाएं आई हैं, तो ये चुनौती है। तो इस चुनौती की तैयारी होनी, जिसमें ऑपरेशन भी करना पड़ता है, डॉक्टर ने बताया। तो हमने कहा कि इसकी आप पूरी चिंता करें, एम्स में व्यवस्था है, तो उन्होंने उसके लिए अलग से भी व्यवस्था की है। तो हमने कहा है कि इसकी पूरी चिंता करें, और स्वास्थ्य मंत्री जी ने आश्वस्त किया है कि जो भी इसमें सहयोग होगा हम पूरा करेंगे। तो ये एक ऐसा संघर्ष है, चुनौती भरा, जिसमें सबों को मिलकर काम करना है और अधिक से अधिक सहूलियत मिले, ये देखना है।
म्यूकोरमाइकोसिस एक फंगल इन्फेक्शन है। इसके जो स्पोर्स हैं इस फंगस के, वो मिट्टी में भी पाए जाते हैं, हवा में भी पाए जाते हैं, कुछ हद तक ये कहते हैं कि फूड में भी पाए जाते हैं। लेकिन ये फंगस जो है लो विरुलेंस है, यूजली इन्फेक्शन नहीं करता है। और अगर हम कोविड से पहले की बात करें, तब भी ये फंगल इन्फेक्शन देखा जाता था, लेकिन इसकी इंसिडेंस बहुत कम थी और रेयर इन्फेक्शन था।
Dr. Jayashree, please, if you could explain to us how many cases have come at your hospital, and currently we hear many hospitals reporting cases like this in Karnataka. Should we be worried?
This is something that is definitely a cause for concern, because earlier we were seeing very few cases of black fungus. In my own career, probably I have seen just a few finger counts of black fungus. But now, immediately after this COVID, there has been a surge of black fungus cases all over the country. It is definitely a cause for concern. And this fungus is nothing but something which is there in me, which is there in you. It is there in everybody. But in the immediate post-COVID status, where there is a lot of environment, where the person's immunity is down, where the sugar is high, where they have received a lot of oxygen and steroids, that time it becomes a nice culture medium for this fungus to grow, to proliferate and then spread all over. So that is why it is a scare. And currently in HCG, we have established a special hotline, a helpline for mucormycosis cases, and we are running a specialized clinic with a set of doctors. And we have in a day probably sometimes seen more than 15-16 cases getting reported.
Okay.
And I think currently we have already dealt with more than 50, and the numbers are just yes, they are rising.
So if, now we hear that there aren't enough. In fact, people who have been detected with black fungus don't have sufficient medical supplies in terms of the injections, or they are finding it hard to access these injections to treat black fungus. Is that true?
There is definitely some truth to it. Yeah, there is some truth to it, because see, we had not really anticipated a surge like this and not really ready with the kind of supplies. The mainstay of treatment is a drug called as amphotericin B, and a particular form of amphotericin B which is less toxic to one's kidneys. So this drug suddenly has been on high demand, and it has been going out of shortage. I mean, out of people are facing shortage, and of course many companies are now coming forward to make it more and more, manufacture it more and more.
Right. I'd like to ask you, Ms. Jayashree, we do know that black fungus, we've seen some really scary pictures. If you can tell us what exactly is the symptoms and how do you early detect it, and if you detect it earlier on, it's better chances of curing it, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like any other disease, black fungus is something which early detected can be better managed. Okay. So you have to think of an environment where a person is has COVID at about 2 or 3 weeks post-COVID. If he or she has been in a hospital environment, has been diabetic, or has been having high surge of sugars during this COVID, has received high flow oxygen, has received short of steroids, and also drugs which will depress the immunity, like the tocilizumab. So these kind of drugs, then these people should be especially watchful of certain symptoms, like if they could have stuffiness of the nose, they could have heaviness of one side of the face, they could have tooth pain or slight numbness. Very direct, straightforward symptoms, they are not there. There is no classy symptom as such. So it could start with any of these vague symptoms, like a slight headache or something, and then with all this history that I just listed out, there has to be a very strong suspicion that there could be this fungal infection which is there inside.
People who are diabetics who get COVID infection, after the 9th or 11th or 15th day, you start getting swelling on one side of the face. And it's not some pain-like thing, maybe I have heaviness. No. This is a severe, unbearable pain which doesn't allow you to sleep in the night, associated with numbness of the upper lip and the teeth on one side. It could be the right side or the left side. Both sides very rarely we see in severe cases.
Okay.
Yeah. And in some people, the eyeball also slowly starts popping out and the vision starts gradually coming down.
The chairman of India's Technical Advisory Group on Vaccination has defended the government's decision to increase the gap between doses of Covishield from 12 to 16 weeks from 6 to 8 weeks. Data says is evolving, and there are other ways of sparing doses, like deferring the vaccines in recovered COVID patients. He spoke to Sneha Mordani. Listen in.
Dr. N.K. Arora is the member of the Entagi group, which decides on the immunization program, and this is the group that has made suggestions to the government vis-a-vis increasing the dosing of the Covishield vaccine. Among the other suggestions that you all have made, Dr. Arora, thank you for your time. I want to ask you, world over, AstraZeneca's duration between the two doses is about 12 weeks or so, less than 12 weeks. 12 weeks is considered ideal. What made you come up with the decision to go for the 12-week to 16-week duration?
So, first of all, I would like to emphasize that India and UK are the two major consumers of this vaccine. Practically no other European country is using AstraZeneca or the Covishield. In North America also, it is a very small amount of vaccine is used by Canada. there is some vaccine usage in Latin America and Africa and our neighbors. And there is highly variable interval used by different countries. And the reason is that original initial data was not very convincing whether one should go for 4 weeks, 8 weeks or 12 weeks or more than 12 weeks. In fact, the original AstraZeneca data was showing that if it can go up to 44 weeks and beyond 12 weeks, means total of almost 6 months. So we did not go in for a longer interval initially, particularly when we were told that the focus of the vaccination is for 45 years and more, and we have sufficient vaccine. 6 weeks later, we reviewed after WHO came, and we thought that at that time we again reviewed the data, but we made it 6 to 8 weeks because beyond that, the uncertainty of getting the breakthrough infection was very high. And we, in fact, requested that if real life data comes from UK, because that's the biggest user, and if that shows good protective efficacy after first dose of long interval, then it will become confident, because we have a huge population, and if a lot of breakthrough infections occur, it does not augur well for the confidence of the people. So in the last week of April, this evidence came from UK Public Health Agency of England.
Yes.
And then Scotland as well as Bristol. These data came which shows that the vaccine, a single dose vaccine, is 65 to 80% effective.
Yes.
And taking that as a lead, which has come from real life data, and then there is some data from Canada, which is obtained on a personal level. They are giving between 12 weeks and 16 weeks. So keeping all this evidence, the committee decided that we will have a 12 to 16 week interval between 2 doses of Covishield.
What happens to those people, Dr. Arora, who've taken 2 doses of the vaccine already and are concerned now that perhaps they have to go in for a booster dose of the vaccine? Because they have been saying that we have taken the 2 doses, which doesn't mean that the efficacy then gets reduced because we took it within what the government had initially suggested.
Very valid question. I am sitting in front of you. I had exactly 4-week interval. I was one of the first one to receive on 16th January, first dose, and then got the second dose around 15th or 14th of February. So, and similarly, there are people who have taken at 2-month interval. That means 6 to 8 weeks. In fact, when you complete the schedule, the antibody levels go very high. And as a result, your efficacy is good enough, and you don't need for any booster, at least for the time being. Maybe just like Covaxin has asked for, there may be possibility 6-9 months later, booster may be required for anybody who has received it even at 3 weeks. So there is absolutely no concern. We, as our horizon of people who are receiving vaccine is increasing, we would like the maximum benefit, and that is the reason that committee revisited the whole interval schedule and decided to increase it to 12 to 16 weeks.
You know, Dr. Arora,
just let me complete.
Okay.
So, but simultaneously, to further consolidate our and reinforce our decision and whether we are on the right track or not, what we have done is that a national vaccine tracking platform is being established, so that those who are getting infection and those who have vaccinated, we will put the data together to see if there is any increase in breakthrough infections. Because if there is a significant increase in breakthrough infections, we might have to revisit the decision, because the vaccines work in different environment, not exactly same as it is. And that's the reason in Sri Lanka they are using it 10 weeks. There are places where they are using at 8 weeks. I think Nepal is using 8 weeks. So there is a variability because the data does not give you confidence the way it has been done so far.
Okay, so from what I understand, you're saying that this decision to give this dose of the vaccine, the second one, between 12 to 16 weeks also is something that could change in the next few days or weeks or so.
No, not days or weeks, but three to 4 months later, we are going to revisit. This is part of our minutes of the meeting, that we are going to revisit this decision, and accordingly, because we are going to be the huge on we are still the largest user of this vaccine, and decisions we take, particularly in poor countries, this vaccine is being used. So we will have to be looking at it based on our own data, so that it is a guidance for us as well as many other countries which have similar environment.
Dr. Arora, the argument is that we just didn't know what to do. We all know that there are no doses in the country. There is a major supply crunch. The demand is extremely high. And that's the reason why you just had no option but to take this call.
Yeah, that is repeatedly being said, that this is not any technical reason, but more because of to take care of. So I will give you the reason that if we increase the dose by 1 month, only about 4 to 5 crore doses. Today, single dose recipients are about 14 crores. 2 doses recipient are 4 crores. And out of single dose recipients, 14 crores, 10% or about 2 crores are your Covaxin. Remaining 12 crores is Covishield. And if I increase the interval, it is a matter of 5 or 6 crore doses only. Now, if I increase, still those 5-6 crore people will have to be given the vaccine a month later. For a country of our size, how much difference will it make? So it is not just sparing the vaccine strategy. It is a technical reason that we would like our population to be best protected in the current scenario.
But you didn't have that in mind at all? That because I remember so well that when the UK had first introduced AstraZeneca, they did say that we want to cover maximum number of people quickly, and that's the reason why our gap is 12 weeks. You didn't have that in mind at all?
At this time, because it is not, because when they were starting, 3 months means 3 months, and they had a huge amount, and they did it also for Pfizer vaccine, where they were clearly told by the manufacturer that beyond 3 weeks they are not responsible. And they were having raging outbreak at that time. So that time they took this decision because of vaccine insufficiency, and they wanted to vaccinate the largest number possible as soon as possible. So that was you are absolutely correct. This is on December 31st that the PHE came out with that statement. But when we started, we had sufficient vaccine, and it is for more than 45. Even now, if we just focus on 45 plus, we will be able to saturate that population by July or mid-August. So that is not an issue. The vaccine insufficiency has come up more just last 1 week or 10 days, primarily because 18 to 45 is there. So our target is at the moment.
There were problems of the shortage of the dosage, sir, even before that. It's not just that ever since 1st of May, we're talking about shortage of vaccines. There's just been so much back and forth on shortage of vaccines even before that, ever since the drive began pretty much.
No, ever since drive began, no. It is, I would agree that in the later part of April, there was shortages, but we have been given to understand that even now, total 50 or 55 crore doses have been promised for the program to be given by the end of July, which is sufficient to saturate 45 years plus population. So the vaccine shortage is certainly there, but it has been exaggerated by 18 to 45 primarily. The second thing is there are other ways of vaccine sparing strategies. By those who are infected, defer the vaccine for a while. Those who get corona after first dose, defer it for a while. These are truly vaccine sparing effect. And I think a decision is going to come up for that. So that is more effective way because you are addressing a larger population and you spare the vaccine because those who are already immunized by infection, natural infection, you spare that. But this one is more to look at and improve the vaccine efficacy so that people benefit from the vaccine.
You know, Dr. Arora, that brings me to my next question, because that again is one of the suggestions that you made, that those people who have got the infection defer the vaccination of the second dose by 6 months or so. You are doing that because you are admitting that there is a shortage and people do have antibodies, and that's going to offer them protection up to 6 months. Is that the data that you have with you?
So the exact deferment is yet to be decided. It is not 6 months. It is yet to be decided. But we have the data from India which shows that for a fixed period, there is the individuals are totally protected, and all those data is being taken into account when this deferment decision comes through.
What has the government told you as far as those suggestions of deferring this vaccine for up to 6 months, the second dose for up to 6 months is concerned? Or even the first dose for that matter?
You are bringing up the duration repeatedly. That duration has not been finalized yet. I think in a day or so, this will be finalized. But the important point is that vaccine sparing strategy is the vaccine sparing strategy. Whether it is 2 months, 3 months, 4 months or 6 months, that is a vaccine. So once somebody is infected, somebody has a RT-PCR or a RAT test positive infection, you defer the first dose of vaccine, or somebody gets the first dose and then gets the infection, you defer the second dose. These are vaccine sparing strategies, and it will become very apparent in a day or two.
Which are the others, sir?
So we will be able to spare the vaccines in that case a sizable amount of vaccine, because the current infection rate is so high that that will help the community very well, and it will not harm those who have got infected because they are protected at least for a certain period.
So which are the other strategies that you've recommended to the government for sparing the vaccines?
That's the only one.
Okay. Sir, you also have suggested lactating pregnant and vaccinating pregnant and lactating women. Just to tell us, where is the data? Because trials, I believe, have not been done on pregnant women at all.
So no specific decision has been done on that. I think whatever is circulating is not correct. And I think all of us have to wait what the final decision is taken by the committee as well as by the government. I think we'll have to wait for a while.
Okay, so right now, lactating women and pregnant women should not be taking the vaccine.
As of today, lactating women will become eligible for getting the vaccines.
Okay.
For pregnant lady, a firm decision is yet to be taken.
All right. Lactating women were also part of the clinical trials for both the vaccines, sir?
Lactating women, the concern for fetus is not there anymore. And the vaccines available are not live vaccines. So that's why the world over, including WHO, suggests that lactating women should get all the vaccines.
Also, when I say lactating, I mean women who've just had a baby and are feeding the child. So they can take the shot against the
So immediately after delivery, any time, these women can take a shot.
So via the breast milk, will the immunity be passed on to the child also who's feeding from the mother?
This is very important question and interesting. I think there are very little studies, but as a general principle, whenever mother is immunized, children do get benefit out of that. But here, the type of vaccine, the type of antibody which are required, it is oral antibodies are not there, or whether to what extent that would be, because breast milk excretes vaccine antibodies which are working on the surface of mouth and the gastrointestinal tract. So this issue is not very clear. At least I am not much aware of how useful it is.
All right, Dr. Arora, thank you so much for joining us. Interesting things that you've told us, and you've also indicated that there is a possibility that soon a decision is going to be taken on whether those, in fact, who have recovered from COVID will be taking the vaccine after 6 months or 4 months or 3 months, that again is something that needs to be decided by the government. Your suggestions have been made. Thank you so much for your perspective, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So we do a break. When we return, cyclone Taukte